The Cummer Museum of Art and Gardens in Jacksonville curated art from ancient times to the present. Explore galleries, enjoy refreshments and entrees at the cafe, and treasures in the museum shop. More at cummermuseum.org. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler. On today's First Coast Connect, an iconic mall faces an uncertain future. With rampant code violations and city fines mounting, we ask Arlington Rep. Ken Amaro what's next for Regency Square Mall. Then a new podcast tackles the growth of Roadblocks 2 and visions for downtown development. We talk to the host of the Jacksonville Blueprint Podcast. And we follow the groove of the Electro Lounge into the cosmos ahead of a joint planetarium presentation by WJCT and Mosh. You can join the conversation on air by calling 904-549-2937 or emailing firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. You can also reach out on social media. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Last night, House Republicans approved the framework for a partisan budget plan that backs President Trump's domestic agenda. NPR's Claudia Grisales reports.
The budget framework unlocks the next steps for Republican-led committees to piece together the details for the sweeping multi-trillion-dollar plan. The partisan plan will address immigration, tax, defense, and energy policy, as well as extend $4.5 trillion in tax cuts passed under President Trump's first term. It also aims to cut $2 trillion in federal spending, which could lead to more than $800 billion in cuts to major U.S. health programs such as Medicaid. The lone Republican to vote no on the plan, Kentucky's Thomas Massie, argued the GOP effort will add $20 trillion to the U.S. debt. Claudia Grisales, NPR News.
President Trump holds his first cabinet meeting today with his secretaries since taking office. NPR's Stephen Fowler says billionaire and special government employee Elon Musk is supposed to attend.
This cabinet meeting is going to be worth watching because it's one of the first major public sources of tension between the Trump administration and the implementation of Musk's DOGE effort, but there's some other simmering conflicts in the background. Many of the actions that Musk and DOGE have taken are in court after running afoul of very particular and explicit set of rules and laws that govern the government.
NPR's Stephen Fowler reporting. President Trump has ordered an investigation into another imported metal, copper. Trump's executive order suggests he may consider new tariffs on copper. This comes as Trump's tariffs on imported aluminum and steel are supposed to take effect in mid-March. Trump says his decision to levy a 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico will go ahead next week. It's not clear if negotiations might delay any of these. The White House decision to hand-pick which news outlets cover the president is being met with swift backlash from members of the press. NPR's Windsor Johnston reports the administration says going forward it will choose its own press pool, breaking decades of precedent.
The White House Correspondents Association, a group that represents reporters who cover the administration, has long determined on its own which journalists take part in the daily pool. Eugene Daniels, the president of the organization, spoke to NPR about the White House decision.
In free countries like the United States is, leaders don't get to pick the people who cover them day in and day out. The WHCA, our job has been for many, many years to not keep people out. We consistently bring new organizations in.
The administration says the move would be more inclusive and restore access back to the American people who elected President Trump.
Windsor Johnston reporting. This is NPR.
You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning, I'm Stephen Ponson. It's now 9:04. The cost to raise the power lines across the St. Johns River to Blunt Island has more than doubled in cost to $117 million. To cover the increase, Jacksport and JEA plan to split the difference of $65 million needed for the project. News partners at the Jacksonville Daily Record report the Jacksonville Port Authority approved its half of the $65 million on Monday, and JEA's board approved their half yesterday. The plan is to elevate the lines from their current 175 feet to at least 225 feet so larger cargo ships can navigate the river. The move will help support thousands of jobs at the port and related positions such as trucking and logistics. These additional funds still need Jacksonville City Council approval. Atlantic Beach City Commission chambers were packed this week with citizens concerned over how to share a popular park. On Sunday, youth baseball players were asked to leave Jack Russell Park to make way for a farmer's market, which brings in a lot of traffic and parking needs. Parents in Atlantic Beach were told baseball teams could not play games on the fields until after 2:30 for the next 4 weeks. Many who showed up to speak at the meeting wore green stickers asking the commissioners to pause the process and preserve Atlantic Beach life. This issue has been tabled until April 14th. It'll be a beautiful day here in Northeast Florida. We're going to have sunny skies this afternoon with highs reaching the upper 70s to low 80s inland. It'll be a little bit cooler out at the coast. Highs will reach the lower 70s there.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, supporting books, radio, podcasts, film, television, theater, and more to bridge science and the humanities. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, once a destination the city could be proud of, it's become a liability it's desperate to control. We talk about the future of Regency Square Mall with District Council member Ken Amaro. Later in the program, he wants to solve the riddle of downtown development. We interview the host of a new podcast about what needs to happen and who should pay for it. But first, there was a time when people considered buying homes so that they could be near Regency Square Mall. Now, it can't even lure vendors. To talk about why that is and how the city plans to address it is Ken Amaro, the Arlington District Council member for the city of Jacksonville. Welcome, Ken.
Thanks, Ann. Not just a district representative, but a longtime resident of Arlington. So I've seen the transition.
Yeah, so talk about that. I mean, you are too young of a fellow to have been living in Jacks when this mall opened, but certainly you remember your early experiences with it.
Fantastic place to go to. It became a hub. You bring your families. You not only shop, there were entertainments, fine eateries. I'm trying to, God, the name just escaped me. Some of the restaurants that were there that were just magnets. You went there, and so you did all those things as a family, and it helped the community tremendously. And over the years, we saw this dramatic decline.
You have 3 daughters?
4.
4 daughters,
Yeah.
and a couple of grandkids now?
Yeah, 3 grandkids. I'm a girl dad with 3 grandkids, and my oldest, she is 13. I want to get that right because that's kind of sensitive there. Playing volleyball and things of that nature. In fact, they reside in Houston, and I got a call the other day, and she said, "Papa, we were cooking. In other words, they were crushing it."
I mean, I wonder with your girls, was that a destination mall for you as a family? Was that the kind of place? Because they used to have all kinds of events there, not just shopping, but concerts and recitals.
Fashion shows, things of that nature. And so, yes, it was, as I said a second ago, for not just my family, but families not only in the Regency area, but throughout the area from the beaches to the west side, the east side, that would come to Regency Square Mall.
And we know that has changed somewhat. There's been a lot of reporting on its decline. Let's hear just from one recent story about Regency.
It used to be a place where people hung out and had fun, shop and eat, but as you can see, it's decrepit and empty, and now there are only 2 vendors left inside, a Japanese restaurant and a jewelry store.
So it is almost empty.
Yeah, decrepit is an appropriate description. Yeah, some of the, I guess, legacy tenants that they had, the LensCrafters, the Bath and Body Works, and things like that. I mean, they left. They left in a hurry. They were trying to hang in there because they had the customer base. People would still come in spite of to get their, vision check, new pair of glasses, or get their favorite Bath and Body Works, candles, fragrance, whatever it is. So they did have a steady stream of customers that would come in spite of. And then once the air conditioning went out and the roofs were leaking and the management and the owners weren't willing to do anything, it was like, we're out. And so Jimmy Jam's urban wear store was one of the last large retailers who was in there, and they bailed out as well. And so the writing was on the wall. I do believe if the Impact Church was still not there, then everything else around it would surely come tumbling down.
Yeah. Before you were a city council member, many people will remember you were a consumer reporter at First Coast News for many, many years, 42 years.
Mm-hmm.
This was a story that you covered as a journalist before you had it as your responsibility as a council member.
What's amazing to me is the current property owners it's not like they're struggling for money. It's like a $3 billion company. They have made a business paradigm of acquiring shopping centers that are in marginal status around the country. In fact, Namdar Realty, Wall Street Journal did a piece about 1.5 years ago, or maybe less, about their business practice, how they've acquired a couple of hundred shopping centers, and then they just let them go into absolute decline. And I use the expression to describe them as real estate vampires. They suck everything out of the property and then dispose it after municipalities start enforcing code violations, like what we're doing here in Jacksonville. The code violations at Regency are about 2 million now.
Yeah, and we've been showing some pictures on our live stream. The images of the inside of the current Regency Square Mall are just apocalyptic. I mean, the ceiling is, falling in, the mold is everywhere. These are places that didn't have air conditioning for a long time. First of all, how has that company been? Are they at all responsive to your inquiries, to the fact that they have accrued all of these code violation fines?
Recently, before it arrived at the position that it's now with just the one vendor in the food court and the jewelry store, there was a Braille book tenant that the air conditioning went out on their side, and my office reached out to Namdar and with some very stern language, and they, within a week or so, they responded to that, and they restored the air conditioning on that side of the building. But that was my last communications with them, because there was a deal pending with Blackwater to acquire the property. Don't know what's the status of that. The anticipated closing date was in January. That has not occurred. So I don't know if there's still conversations taking place. I've had talks with some others, and I don't think I'm in a position to disclose who they are right now. But they have left me feeling optimistic that since Blackwater hasn't physically closed in January, that things are shifting.
What would that suggest if Blackwater wasn't taking over the property? Would that allow for more flexibility, or?
Well, what it does is it opens it up for others to have an interest,
I see.
who may have an interest to acquire the property. It's a tricky situation because there are multiple property owners.
Right.
The
Explain
Sears
us
is
that.
owned. Well, Sears location and the Sears parking is owned by a former Sears executive who acquired a number of Sears properties when Sears went under. In the rear of that, you've got the Dillard's property, which is owned by Dillard's. And then on the front, you've got the Impact Church property and its parking spaces, which is owned by the Impact Church.
And that's almost kind of divides the physical mall in
Precisely, yes, because they're like smack in the middle.
half.
I know the church is amenable and willing to be a collaborator with whomever that comes forth. And because they have a vested interest, they have over $10 million already invested in that location. What's amazing to me is the math of this whole nightmare that Namdar historically acquired the property, including the AMC piece, for about $14 million. And don't hold me to the numbers. I'm just giving you a ballpark. And then they sold the AMC piece
For double that.
for 20-something million. And then they sold the church piece for $10 million. So they've already made back whatever they
And then some.
invest, and some. And yet there continues to be this dragging, this lack of commitment to what is clearly a prime piece of real estate that's a focal point for anyone that's traversing Monument, Atlantic Boulevard. The location is just prime,
Right in the center of so many.
approximately 80 acres or so.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, we're talking to City Council member Ken Amaro about Regency Square Mall and its decrepit state, as we've said, and its future. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. I just want to read a couple of comments that we've been getting on social media. One saying, we saw something similar in Miami. All it needed was some investors and a glow up. Now it is the go-to mall in Kendall. I'm sure
Wow.
Regency will
Kendall
follow.
Mall,
Mhm.
shopping center.
Another comment saying in its heyday, historic Regency Square Mall was the promenade and pop fashion nexus of Northeast Florida. Until the Riverwalk and Jacksonville Landing were established, Regency was a holiday mainstay and a safe place for teens and retirees, and an absolute destination for U.S. military returning from global missions. Millions of memories made there. I also want to take a call from Stanley on the north side. Good morning, Stanley. Go ahead.
Yes. Hello there, everybody. I'm a little disappointed here that we are not been able to. I'm talking about before Ken came. This had been going on for years. Why have not the community put some recommendation to make some changes in that community? Because of the income level, that mall should be successful. That's a leadership problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Stanley. That entire area, we should say, has, its fortunes have changed somewhat. I mean, Arlington was sort of the first suburb in Jacksonville. You've lived there a long enough time to know that it has had some decline in some areas, certainly hard times.
It's funny, when I moved there, I used to jokingly say that it's the station wagon community with 2.2 kids. You're right. Initially, it was one of the new suburbs, affordable homes, large lots, families were drifting there. And it was stable for a very long time until newer suburban communities emerged, and then folks started moving to, whether it's Mandarin, St. Augustine, wherever it is. And so it became kind of transitional. And I wish I knew specifically what percentage of properties are now rental versus ownership. But it's in that transition stage. And so my commitment to that area is to stop the decline and rebuild it to what it was or what it can be. As far as the caller about the community has had a number of suggestions as to what can be done.
Mm-hmm. What do you hear from them?
But the community doesn't have the resources. This is not a community resource thing. It's having private investors with money that can come and say, let's acquire the property. If the seller is willing to sell, so you've got all these variables in the equation, and let's turn it around. Now, I said earlier that I'm optimistic because some of the things that I have heard have great possibility. I see a tremendous mixed use of not only residential but retail and more, and because again of the size of the property, the footprint is tremendous, and I think it can make a significant change on that corner.
What about a residential component? I mean, I know
That's what I'm saying.
I know, but how realistic is that? Is that?
I think extremely, very realistic.
Mm-hmm.
If it's pieced properly with retail. Let's look at Town Center. Town Center is a different concept, lifestyle concept, but right now you can go to Town Center. A, you can stay at a hotel. B, you can rent an apartment at Town Center.
Right.
And C, you can shop. And E, you can eat. And so you can create that same kind of mixed use dynamic right there at that location because you've got the space to be able to do it.
I mean, the funny thing is people say that Regency Mall helped contribute to the decline of downtown Jacksonville. And then you have these other malls, including, Orange Park, the avenues initially, but then more recently Town Center, as draining away interest and the vibrancy of Regency. Is retail in that kind of scale just a zero-sum game?
Americans love to shop. Number one, I mean, we just got through the holidays not too long ago, and for weeks, what were we hearing about how much was being spent, and not only in brick and mortar at stores, but how much was also being spent online. So we're a very consumer-driven society, if you will, and so I think that the opportunities are still there for retail at that particular location, if properly positioned, if it's attractive. I know it's hard to say that when we have Joanne Fabrics this week going out. Mm-hmm. So it's just if you're going to be successful, you got to give people what they want and meet them at what they want. And so whatever is developed there will have to be what they want.
I wonder, just, in your role as a consumer reporter, one of the things that you would be covering are people's working conditions or the ability to, for instance, return something if you've purchased something. I would guess that the gradual and sometimes abrupt departure of some of these tenants has left people in the lurch, whether they're employees or customers.
You're stuck with your stuff. And because of economic forces or whatever, we know that retail is a shifting landscape, and from a consumer's perspective, you have to be do your due diligence, know what your rights are, so you don't get stuck with stuff. And I have always, before I patronize a business, I want to know exchange policies and refunds and all that. Not that I have any intent of returning anything, but I want to know beforehand. I remember years ago, I went into a Regency Mall at a store, and I go into the retailer, and I had a gift card from the retailer. I can't remember the name of the retailer, and I went in there to use the gift card, and there were like conditions that, well, if you use the gift card, we can't give you this and that. And I said, "Oh, well, thank you, and I won't be back." I didn't go back. It's just instinctively for me that I do that kind of.
It's in your DNA now.
Yeah. Do that on the front end, so that I have a problem on the back end.
I know that one of the things that was discussed, especially with that Sears portion, there was conversation of whether Sporting Jacks was interested. That's the soccer league that is looking for a home. And that section, which is sort of the southwest corner of the property, was attractive to them. Where are those conversations?
To the best of my knowledge, they're still ongoing. I have not had any talks with that group as of late, but I would imagine that they're still in the hunt.
And they'd be having conversations with the same sort of negligent,
precisely the same players,
inattentive owner, I guess we should say.
Yeah. There's no way to get around that. Karen Matheson has been diligent in following the ongoings of Regency Square Mall.
Longtime business reporter here and editor
at the Daily Record. And she's done a couple of pieces where individuals had inquired about service availability, a Circle K, and most recently Hurricane Kane, a chicken tender retailer out of Baton Rouge area, and they inquired with JEA and COJ as to what service availability, water, sewer, things of that nature. But nothing has come forth as to moving that forward. And nothing can be done until they get some sort of agreement with the current owner, Namdar Realty.
Right. We've got a call from Eric on the south side. Good morning, Eric. Go ahead.
Good morning, and thank you both for your decades of reporting here in the community. It's so important under the things that we're living with today. I'm a 77-year-old native of Jacksonville and a demographer. In June of 1965, I walked from University Boulevard to Regency, and I wasn't quite old enough to get a labor job. I try not to go to that area anymore. The housing is either 40 or 50 years old, or it's brand new over there on Regency Square Boulevard with no public access or even walking capability if Regency was still there. The intersection at Southside Boulevard and Atlantic is just a complete nightmare. People being injured and killed routinely. Arlingwood, yes, Ken, was wonderful. Who can afford a big yard now? We have water restrictions. Who can spend $1,000, $2,000 a year just to have a sprayer come in and take care of the bugs? For the decades I ride those neighborhoods and I look at them. I have now, 5, 6 decades of history. And you have about 40% of people in Duval County rent compared to 1/3 nationally. From Monument all the way to Indian Springs, it's a sea of cars. Cars everywhere. Cars being new. Cars being repaired. It's frankly quite ugly.
Eric, thanks. Your thoughts, Ken?
If he's speaking of Atlantic Boulevard being a little Detroit automotive highway, I mean, yes, that's true.
But in terms of like creating infrastructure in that area for people, pedestrians.
Well, there needs to be. Whatever development goes in there will include, since that's where we are in our development phase, that now you have to have walkability. You have to have bike paths. You have to have all those things to make any new communities really sustainable and enjoyable. I would imagine that whatever is done will include those elements. Yes, but you go back 40 years, some of the neighborhoods don't have sidewalks and may never have. As far I was talking with a young lady, what's today, Tuesday. She moved, she and her husband purchased a home in University Park this year. And she's like, I love being in Arlington. I've lived at the beaches. I've lived in Avondale. I live here, and I really love where I am. So, yes, the yards are big, but there's still folks who are looking for that kind of. They don't want the 40-foot lots. They don't want their neighbors directly on top of them that you look out the window. There's still people who are looking for that, and that's what Arlington offers with some of its older homes that were built in the 70s and.
And of course, it has a great 80s. Tree canopy, which not every part of the city
precisely.
can
so
boast.
It's just ironic that just 2 days ago I was having a conversation with her, and I simply said, well, welcome to Arlington.
I want to ask you about just other stuff that's on your mind. I mean, obviously, There's lots going on in your district and a lot going on in the city right now, including conversations about a new jail, discussions about a land swap for the University of Florida that could possibly lead to a development on the old landing site. What is top of mind for you right now?
Well, the two things. Let's take the two subjects you mentioned. First, the land swap piece. The backstory is that UF wants to start classes this fall. and some local investors acquired a piece of property from Home Depot, the inner line property on Bay Street, and the UF vision is to have its campus going from that location westward toward the convention center, and they would like that to be the launching piece of the future growth. DIA, Downtown Investment Authority, is kind of orchestrating this deal, if you will. And as of late, it came up that the current owners of that property would like to swap for two parcels, one where the landing used to be and the adjacent parking that's close to the Main Street Bridge, in exchange for that. There's been some challenges as to valuation. Are they of equal value? And that, to the best of my knowledge, there's now an assessment taking place to see if they are indeed of equal value. The investors acquired the property for $4 million. They told me that they were approached, number one, about buying the property, had no interest in the property.
Who is this you're talking about now?
Gateway.
Okay. Gateway Development.
Gateway Development. That they were approached. They had no interest, and when they were approached, and they were willing to provide, it was done by Collier, one of the largest.
You're talking about when they acquired the inner line property.
Precisely. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And they had no interest. And their investors are, well, if it's a good price, I guess we'll pick it up. And so they offered to buy it for $4 million, and the seller, Interline Home Depot, was willing to sell it for that, and so they acquired it for that.
And you're saying that's important because there was questions about the timeline.
Precisely.
Did they acquire that knowing that UF wanted it?
Yeah.
And was that somehow a deal that was made? And you're saying
that's the cloud over it, but they've presented substantial documentation that was not the case at all, even willing to provide the realtor who brokered the deal, et cetera, et cetera. And so now the question is it of equal value? One of my peers, Councilman Salin, has introduced legislation to purchase it outright instead of doing a land swap. So I'm pretty sure there'll be a lot of conversation in the next few days. In the meantime, University of Florida is hoping that they can have that building in place to get classes started this fall.
I do want to take a couple of calls. Sure. JD in San Marco. Go ahead, JD.
Yes. First of all, my favorite consumer watchdog. Love you to death there, Ken. What I was wondering was why in the world didn't somebody float the idea years back when it started going into decline? Why didn't they take that idea of turning it into an outlet mall like they have in St. Augustine, like they have in Daytona? I think an outlet mall would have been it's a perfect location. People would have flocked there from all over Jacksonville. That's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, JD. I unfortunately I can't tell the entire history, but I remember as a reporter, the property was owned by a company out of Chicago, and they went into bankruptcy, and that's where the decline started. They went up into bankruptcy. Namdar acquired them out of bankruptcy. So if we could turn back the hands of time, and for some reason I want to say the company's name was Continental, but I don't recall. If they had seen the writing on the wall and started making changes back then, we probably wouldn't be where we are right now.
Do you think the city will ever recoup those code violations, those fines at nearly $2 million we're talking about?
Well, I'll be honest. If we have new investors come in that are committed and have the dollars and and they've acquired the property, I would be willing to forgive those, put those fines on the side, if you will. And there's precedent for that. They've done it with other properties, so that the investors can move forward and not have to be saddled with an additional $2 million.
Got a call from William on the South Side. Good morning, William. Go ahead.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm enjoying the conversation because I have reflections about when that area was bustling with so many businesses. But because of the economic downturn, my question or ideas from y'all it's becoming a food desert because there aren't really any grocery stores in the area. What are the city's plans or anything related to investing and bringing more grocery stores and supermarkets to the area for that community? And thank you very much.
Thanks, William.
Thanks, William. William, less than 2 miles away from that location, there's an Aldi supermarket. But I would agree with you to some degree that if you go east of that, there's nothing. And so, if I'm still on the city council, I can assure you of one thing, that anyone that comes to me with proposal, mixed use, retail, that somehow that would be one of the elements that I would like to see incorporated in the future use of that property. There's a Publix on Monument, but that's probably about 6-7 miles away. So his point is well taken. The old Best Buy on Atlantic, at one time there was an large Asian supermarket that was interested in doing something with that Best Buy property, but I haven't heard anything, so I don't even know if that's even still on the table.
Got a call from Vicki in St. Johns County. Go ahead, Vicki.
Hi. Regarding the Regency Square Mall, I've always thought it would be a good idea to combine FCCJ and now UNF and put the campuses there. It's all under roof and with lots of great parking.
Oh.
Thanks, Vicki. I mean, certainly FSCJ tried that experiment with the Bay Meadows Mall.
Yeah, the Grand Boulevard Mall,
Mhm.
and it's working.
Mhm.
They've made that kind of a I don't want to say fintech, but I'll say tech center. And for Florida State College, that is working. They've transformed that location. It's being used and used well. UNF, they've taken the Kernan Boulevard corridor,
Mhm.
and they've acquired several properties. I'm trying to remember the computer program company that was out there. They acquired that property, and I think they would prefer to be right there where they are versus having some extension campus somewhere else throughout
Right.
the city.
And I do want to get back to the jail just because there was a
Yes.
protest about it yesterday. We mentioned it just briefly, but there are some voices emerging saying if the city's going to drop $1 billion estimated to build a new jail, let's put other priorities, other considerations in the mix along with that. Community saying we've got other needs.
And these are some interesting issues. Councilmember Michael Boylan chaired a quality of life committee long before I got there, and as part of that, they also looked at the jail. When Councilman Ron Salem was president of the council, he established a jail committee, and again they looked at the jail. And the reality is, in fact, City Council the other night approved a new lease agreement so that the sheriff can move his resources from the police memorial building to what the Blue Cross Blue Shield building on Riverside.
The police functions, not the jail.
Not the
Just to be
jail,
clear,
just
yeah.
the police memorial building. And that's the I think that's going to be the impetus of this, that property slowly being removed from the riverfront. And so a study determined that, yes, this facility is woefully inadequate, blah, 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 blah. And then there have been some estimates as to what will it cost to replace in today's dollars, $800 million, $1 billion, things of that nature. And then the other question is, where do you put it? And then the third question is, well, do you let a private investor actually do the outlay and then you lease from them? There are a lot of conversations, nothing thus far, but it's a need. And we can argue about, services versus jail, where you're putting your resources. And people in this community want to feel safe. There's still public safety is still a paramount concern. and that's part of that piece. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in 5 years. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know where that conversation is going to wrap up. Whatever they do, it's going to have to be compliant to laws, because they've had so many issues, not meeting federal standards, things of that nature. It's going to have to be an institution that also provides compassion. Right now, there will probably have to be a campus type environment, and I'm just speaking out of terms there just from the conversations, because of the need for mental health treatment and things of that nature, and medical services. So I have no idea where it's going to go, but it's unfortunate that the narrative yesterday made it seem like there was a decision pending, that legislation had been introduced, that a vote was coming, and I'm pretty sure that as we go through the deliberations, all of this will be taken into context.
Well, Ken Amaro, it is a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much for being on here
And
today.
thank you for having me, and thank you for what you guys are doing, keeping the community informed and keeping us in check.
All right. That's our goal. Coming up next, a local podcaster searches for the beating heart of downtown Jacksonville. Welcome back. Well, a lot of great minds have tried to solve the riddle of downtown Jacksonville. Now it's the subject of a new podcast. Here to tell us about it is Marty Busekrus, creator and host of the Jacksonville Blueprint Podcast. Welcome, Marty.
Hey, how are you?
Great. It's very nice to have you here.
It's interesting being on the other side of the microphone. Usually I'm the one asking the questions.
That's
so.
right. Get ready.
Yeah.
So there's lots of podcasts out there. As far as I know, this is the only one that's really narrowly focused on downtown growth and development. Why did you see a need for a podcast?
Well, I think that there's so much going on, right? You read the newspapers. There's a lot going on in downtown Jacksonville. And what I wanted to try to do is give all of the participants, not just the developers, but everybody who's part of the community, I wanted to give them an opportunity to express what they want. What everybody, if you ask 100 different people what their vision of downtown is, you're going to get 100 different answers. So let's ask 100 different people, and let's all collectively try to talk about downtown and what we like, what we don't like. Sometimes most importantly, what we don't like.
Is that what the conversation tends to circle around?
Sometimes, right? I've heard several times, well, we don't want to be like Miami, So it's what do we want out of a downtown? And then the harder question, how do we get there?
Right. So you've talked to several people that are fairly prominent in the community so far. Alex Zafakis is a local developer from JWB. You've talked to Travis Williams, who works for Lyft Jacks in the Out East area.
Yep.
Are there any themes emerging, even as you talk to people who are very different kinds of stakeholders?
Yeah. Well, yes. The most interesting thing, I think, is everybody says that you have to get a sense of the community. If you are a developer and you just come in and you're like, I want to build this, and you don't get input from the community, your project isn't going to go anywhere. And I think that that's been one of the consistent themes. We talk a lot about what other successful cities have done. A lot of people point to Tampa. It used to be, I guess, our sister city. We had Brian Payden on from ARCO, who was talking about Birmingham, Alabama, and their transformation. And one of the things was community buy-in, and then also the government's role in all of that.
It's interesting. I mean, the people that you've talked to, there are often these comparative cities. Tampa used to be much more, of a similar type situation. St. Petersburg, both of which have really taken off. And now I find, in your podcast, people are doing more comparisons to, nothing against Birmingham, Chattanooga, Knoxville, but it does seem to me that those cities are, often smaller southern cities. They're not necessarily traditionally, in terms of like the size of the city, as aspirational as some of the other cities that we used to look to. And do you feel like Jacksonville has fallen behind as these other southern cities have surged ahead?
Not necessarily. I've seen a lot worse. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and I love St. Louis. It's go Cardinals, go Blues. Like, I love it. But their downtown has drastically fallen behind. So I don't think that Jacksonville is as bad as some people say that it is. I know that the jokes with the city of renderings and all that, but I think that's good because that means that you've got people who are willing to spend money at least on a drawing. You go to some other cities, they're not even spending money on drawings. So I don't think that we're in a bad position at all.
How are you selecting the folks that you want to talk to? What's your criteria?
Listen, we're new in the podcast space, so I'm willing to talk to everybody because, again, it's about the community. If you're a worker in downtown, an office worker, let's have a conversation. If you have a good idea of what you want downtown to look like, let's talk. Everybody in the community needs to participate, not just the developers with the capital.
Yeah. It's interesting in the promo for your podcast, you talk about people who complain that deals don't pencil in this town.
Yeah.
Like, I literally didn't even know what that meant. I had to Google the phrase. But so tell us a little bit about it. I do know, but for people who don't, and explain how does that apply to Jacksonville?
Yeah. So the podcast is about downtown, but then in order to get there, in order to get to a successful downtown, the area itself has to, the MSA, the Metropolitan Statistical Area, has to be elevated as well. So what I mean by deals don't pencil, or it's very hard to pencil deals here, the rents that we get here in Jacksonville are very, very tough for an investor or a developer to make money given the high cost to construct, buildings. It's just you're not going to make any money. So how do like for example, office rents in downtown, Jacksonville, $25 a square foot. Miami for new buildings, $150 to $200 a square foot. So 3 times the amount of rent for office. You can go build a speculative office building in Miami at $800 a foot is what it costs to build, probably $1,000 a foot. And if you're getting $150 in rent, it pencils. Here,
meaning it pays for the project. It's worth the investment.
Correct. The investors who are investing in that are going to get their money back. They're going to get a return on that investment. Here, it's very, very, very hard. It might cost $600 or $700 a square foot to build an office building, but if you're only getting $25 a year in rent, it's just very, very, very hard, to pencil. So, how do we, as a community, how do we get rents up? How do we get rents in office and retail and residential from their current levels, which are low? How do we get them to double or triple? I know if you're an office or if you're a tenant listening to me, you're probably shaking your head like, "Hey, keep my rent low,"
Well, and we even have a lot of vacancy downtown at least in our office space, right? On 20% vacancy right now. That's a lot.
It is. And I'm not going to shy away from that. It is. But we're not doing that much worse than anybody else. If you look at Miami, West Palm Beach, they are an anomaly in the country. Look at San Francisco, 30%, vacant in their downtown. New York City is at like 18 to 20, I think, right now. So we're not worse than anybody else. That's just the office market right now.
Do you have your own sense of what the answer to the riddle of downtown development is?
Boy, if I did, wouldn't that be great? I think that you have to. There's a couple of things that I think are very, very important, and we're on the right path. University of Florida is a big one. If we can get higher paying jobs through higher paying graduate degree programs, that's fantastic. That's what we need.
That's a big one.
That is a big one. That's an absolute big one. If we can attract companies that have higher paying jobs, huge.
It's something that we'll watch. Looking forward to more episodes of the podcast. Marty Busekrus, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
You can come on the next episode. How about that?
Right. It's an invite. Up next, a collaboration between Mosh and WJCT follows the groove of the Electro Lounge into the cosmos.
Life South Community Blood Centers, providing blood and patient services to the local hospitals, serving patients in this community. Donating blood with Life South helps save lives. More at lifesouth.org to find a blood drive near you.
The Jacksonville Music Experience presents the JME Soundstage Series, featuring Shannon and the Clams, Raw Hill, Levitation Room, Ghost Funk Orchestra, and a lineup of local and regional artists. For ticket information and more details, visit jacksmusic.org/JME events.
On the next Fresh Air, Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency has eliminated the jobs of thousands of government employees and left many more uncertain about their positions. We'll talk with Harvard Professor of Public Policy Elizabeth Linos about what that means for federal workers and the rest of us who depend on government services. Join us
Today at noon on WJCT News 89.9.
President Trump's lawsuit against media outlets are sending a message to both sides.
To both the Trump team that they can aggressively pursue these lawsuits, and to others in the media that maybe they are going to have to settle, or that they're going to have to not be able to fight these cases.
I'm Deborah Becker. Lawsuits, free speech, and the changing media landscape. That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11 here on WJCT News 89.9.
Records about our shared history are held at the National Archives, but the agency hasn't been spared from the upheaval currently playing out across other parts of the federal government. Next time on 1A, what does the National Archives do? And how is its work affected by the Trump administration's crackdown on federal agencies?
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, it's a cosmic connection. The lights of the planetarium set to the out-of-this-world groove of WJCT's Electro Lounge. Here to tell us about this is our resident spaceman, Eddie Whistler. He's the planetarium director at the Museum of Science and History. Hi, Eddie.
Hello.
Hello. Also, David Luckin, station manager here at WJCT and host of the Electro Lounge. Hi, David.
Good morning.
So tell us, gentlemen, if you can, how did this crazy fusion come about between the Electro Lounge and the lights of the planetarium?
Well, ever since we started the Electro Lounge 20 years ago, because we play so much space music, I always wanted to do something with the planetarium. I thought this music and the planetarium is a perfect partnership. 20 years later, Eddie was coming in for First Coast Connect. I said, hey, Eddie, how about we do something together?
It only took 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Boom. And he's not remembering, but we actually, it's been longer than, well, not 20 years, because I haven't even been at the museum for 20 years. That's just been his dream. But it was even before I came into First Coast Connect that we had touched on the idea at some time in the past. But anyways, now I have this awesome curated, close to an hour's worth of music that I got from David with, NASA chatter and other stuff built in to help the transition between songs and just tell the story. And we're busy programming all of the visuals that are going to be on a full 60-foot dome overhead for the audience.
Is this an experience that tells a story, or is it really just kind of an immersive, we want to chill out and look at some beautiful images from the cosmos?
It's both. So you're definitely going to get the
both.
one.
Yeah.
But there is an overarching story from beginning to end, and then each individual song kind of tells a story. Either, I'll just leave it at that without giving anything away for sure.
You chose you're a news junkie in addition to being a
Totally.
crazy music head. So did you want to wrap this around any particular part of space history?
It basically wraps around Apollo 11, doesn't it? That's pretty much our focus.
Yeah, a lot of the Apollo
and that's just
stuff.
because when I was putting it together, the net sound from then is so good. I mean, we've got Nixon calling the astronauts, "Hello, Buzz, Wally," and it's just you smile when you hear it because it takes you right back to that night. I remember the night really well in July. So it's kind of a great escape, and it's a little journey and education on Apollo 11.
And
but not real. It's not real. How do I say this?
It's not focused on.
It's
not focused on the moon. It's something. It's like a touch point that we keep coming back to. There are things throughout that David built in that are, you keep returning to, even though we're telling this other story.
Yeah.
You come back in a little tiny circle. It's a lot of fun to be able to program visuals for.
Is it just a visual experience? Are there words that kind of explain what we're looking at, or is it more?
That's where the net sound comes in.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
that's
gotcha.
where our news actualities.
What about the music element? I mean, what songs were you prioritizing? I know that a lot of times, all the time, Electro Lounge has these themes that it
Right.
works into, whether they're explicit or implicit.
It's just that I had a lot of music dealing with space. We have one where this lady says, "I went up to visit an ancient astronaut." Everything, it just came together in my head. It's hard to put into words. The way I work is I usually hear something or see something, a vision, and then I make it happen. So getting with Eddie, I had a few ideas, but he's the
musical
master at that.
card catalog of your brain
It's fair. There's people who know a lot more than me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning. This is an event,
and it's almost sold out. So buy your
on March
tickets.
8th.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the details. How can people do it if they want to do it?
So you have to get tickets through. You could go to WJCT's website. You can go to the Mosh website. All clicks for tickets lead you to our ticket provider online, and you can get tickets. They're $25, and it'll be that evening. The doors open at 7:30 to the museum, and we'll have a bar. There'll be the exhibits, and everybody can cruise around the museum until 8:30, where we'll open up the planetarium doors, and then music will get started shortly thereafter. We're bringing in concert sound, somebody who has worked with us, Pat Shoemaker with Shoemaker Sound Company, is going to be bringing in his setup for our planetarium. He's been with us so many times in the planetarium for live and all this other, and so it's just going to be spectacular visuals and sound.
Kids? No kids? What's the age range here for audience?
I would say it's suggested 13 and up for sure.
Okay. An evening event, and you do get free admission to the museum as you go into this. I mean, you're allowed to wander around because there's some cool exhibits.
Yeah, allowed to wander around, and there's an hour to do so. So you wouldn't be able to do anything except for tease yourself to come back and see us when you have more of the time, for sure.
Is this the first of many collaborations, or do we have to wait another 2 decades, David, to see
I'm
some
not-
action on this?
I'm happy just to get this one off the ground. Maybe we'll sell so many tickets we'll have to do an encore presentation. But at this point, get tickets, come on out, and forget the news. We give you news all week long. This is kind of Eddie's and my way of giving everyone a little escape.
A little break. March 8th. Get your tickets. Eddie Whistler, David Luckin, thanks
Thank
so much
you.
for being here.
Yay!
Yay. We'll see you soon. And that's our program. Thank you for listening. If you have feedback or suggestions, you can send either to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. And if you missed anything today, you can catch the rebroadcast at 8 o'clock tonight on WJCT, or you can find our entire archive at WJCT.org and your favorite podcast platform. The executive producer of First Coast Connect is David Luckin. Our show's produced by Stacey Bennett and directed by Brady Coram. Jamie Valet is our associate producer, and our theme music is by Club de Belugas. Join us tomorrow when we're joined by local government expert Chris Hand to discuss the latest state and local headlines. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. The Cummer Museum of Art and Gardens in Jacksonville curated art from ancient times to the present. Explore galleries, enjoy refreshments and entrees at the cafe, and treasures in the museum shop. More at cummermuseum.org.
This is WJCT.